So welcome, my name is Stephanie Wolf and I am the Membership Relations Coordinator here at Population Connection. I'm thrilled to see so many people tuning in today and plenty of familiar names. I'm happy you're all in attendance and interested to learn more about what Population Connection has been up to for the last year. So during today's webinar, we will hear from our senior staff about program highlights of 2023. And we truly couldn't do this important work without our incredible donors and supporters. Population Connection is a membership-based organization, meaning all of our programs that we're talking about today are made possible by the support of dedicated members like yourself. So if you haven't joined already, I really hope you will consider joining today. Let me go ahead and drop that link in the chat box for you. All right. Now on the call today, we have Pam Wasserman, Senior VP for Education, who will delve into PopEd's latest resources. From our field team, we have Brian Dixon and Rebecca Harrington, who will touch on the repro rights landscape and how they've been mobilizing activists. And then to highlight our outreach and communications efforts, we will hear from Marian Starkey, our VP for Communications. If you have any questions for our speakers, please drop them in the Q&A box that is found at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our very best to get as many answered during the Q&A session, facilitated by our senior analyst, Hannah Evans. And then for any questions we don't have time to answer, we will provide written answers along with a recording of this presentation, the presentation slides, and access to the chat box discussion, which I know is going to be full of so many resources and links that we want to share. So stay tuned, look out for that post-event. Now, those are all the housekeeping items for me. I will go ahead and send it over to you, Pam, to get us started.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Oh, and it's great to see such a wonderful turnout today. I'm going to start sharing my screen because I have a lot of highlights I want to share and some visuals help with that. So let's see. Okay, can everybody see that? All right. So it's been a busy year in our population education program, and I know some of you have probably been to these yearly reviews in the past, but just to let you know, PopEd, we work with K through 12 teachers and also university faculty who prepare new teachers so that they can use our population education curriculum in their classrooms. And there are three areas that I want to bring you up to date on our activities in 2023. And that's our teacher workshops, our contest that we do for middle and high school students. It's a video contest, and a couple of new curriculum resources that we had come out this year. So start off to talk about the workshops. We facilitated about 550 workshops this year. We'll have all the totals probably in another month or two when we get all the follow-up. And if you were on this call last year and the year before, you know, during the pandemic, we went entirely virtual with our trainings. Last year, it was about half and half. You can see that in 2023, about 2/3 of our workshops were back in person again. So it's nice to see that. Our staff really missed interacting with people face-to-face, so that's been great. But the virtual workshops, we do a lot of interactive components of it, and so we're going to continue to do a lot of those going forward. Staff led about 40% of those workshops, and the other 60% were led by our volunteer trainers, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. That AP Summer Institute, what that is are summer institutes that are sponsored by the College Board, who runs these advanced placement courses. The ones that we do the most in around the country are AP Environmental Science and AP Human Geography. Both of those courses have full units on population. So about 20% of our workshops last year were at these summer institutes for these high school teachers. Workshop participants, again, we won't have a firm number until early in the new year, but probably about 10,000 teachers and future teachers came to these different events. You can see that they were held all over the country and throughout Canada. We even did a few in Argentina last year, which was fun. Those were done virtually. We also do a graduate course. This is open to middle and high school teachers who want to take a deeper dive into population issues. It's taught by one of our longtime trainers. It's now taught by a professor at Texas State University, Dr. Jo Beth Ostrick. And we offered that course in the summer and also in the fall. We just wrapped up the fall offering. And these teachers, they get continuing education units, but they can also pay a little bit through Adams State University to get graduate credit. So that's really beneficial to them. We also try to, survey people who have come to our workshops to figure out, are they using the materials? How useful do they find them for their work in the classroom? And we just completed a survey of 2 years worth of participants from 2021 and 2022. And you can see that we've pulled out the online and the in-person because we just wanted to see if there was much difference in terms of the outcomes. But you can see they're pretty close. People rated the content of these workshops and webinars very highly, how useful they were, the presentation quality, the ability to integrate them into what they're teaching. And then you can see the one for the online. We wanted to know, what did they think of our virtual delivery methods? And again, they were pretty favorable. A couple of other just top line highlights from that survey. We don't survey students directly, but we do ask teachers to try to gauge what they think their students are getting out of the pop-ed materials that they're presenting. And you can see again, very, very favorable. They think that our materials engage their students, that they definitely increase their awareness of population issues, and that they improve their critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which goes beyond just pop-ed, but we're glad to see that. The other thing that's nice to see is that it's not something that most teachers are just using for like a lesson a year. 3/4 of them are using the materials more often than that. So that's great for us to gauge. We have the full report on the Population Connection website, and I just put the link below. It's a long report, lots of addendums, but if you want to take a deep dive into that, you can see all the data. Our workshops wouldn't be possible without the help of volunteer trainers who, as I said, did about 60% of our workshops this year. And during the pandemic, a lot of events weren't happening, but a lot of our trainers kind of retired or cycled out. So in 2023, we decided to have 3 training events in different parts of the country to try to bring in new people, especially in areas where we get requests and weren't able to fill them. So you can see that in the summer, we did events in New Orleans and Seattle, and in September, we did one in St. Louis. The one in Seattle was more nationally focused. People came in from all over the US and parts of Canada. The ones in New Orleans and St. Louis were more regional because those are areas where we knew we wanted to beef up the number of resource people we had. So those were great events. Looking ahead to 2024, we have our events planned for Charlotte, North Carolina this summer, and one in Detroit in September. So we'll be able to cover many more workshop requests in those areas after next year. Sometimes I get asked, do we go to conventions where we meet with teachers and give out resources? And we definitely do. The 2 big ones that we do each year are the National Science Teachers Association and the National Council for the Social Studies. NSTA, we typically go to in the spring, and National Council for the Social Studies does theirs toward the end of the year. And that picture was just from the one we did earlier this month. That's Abby, Barbara, and Carol from our team in Nashville, giving out lots of great resources at that event. Some of you might be familiar with what used to be our World of 7 Billion Student Video Contest. Now it's our World of 8 Billion Student Video Contest. This is a way for us to engage students directly or through their teachers through a really fun and educational activity for them to learn more about population issues. The one that we wrapped up in May of this year We had over 3,100 entries, but almost 5,000 students worked on those. And you can see on this infographic that it's very much international. We had participation from 45 countries and most states and territories around the country. And you can see the topics that the students had to focus on this past year were gender equality, waste, and climate change. And what they're asked to do is a 1-minute video, sort of a PSA style video, linking population to one of those topics, and also putting forth some kind of sustainable solution to the particular topic that they choose. So that was a great event. We had lots of winners. We have first place winners, second place winners, and honorable mention winners that all get cash prizes. So just wanted to show you the really cute faces of the kids who were our first and second place winners this year. We've already launched the 2023-24 contest that started in September, and students have until early March to get those submissions in. And you can see our topics for this year are climate migration, health, and invasive species. And if you go to the website, theworldof8billion.org, there's so many resources to help students put these together. There's background readings with links to lots of great resources to give them background on these topics. There's a graphic organizer they can use. We give them lots of tips on producing their videos. So teachers find that really, really useful. If you're interested in finding out how to become a judge, if you have any expertise in either of these 3 topics, you can email me after the session, and I'll let you know about that. And then I just wanted to share a couple of new resources we put out this fall. They're mainly for teachers, but I could see people who aren't in the classroom wanting to get their hands on these too. We worked with Oxford cartographers in the UK to put out this new world population map, where the size of the countries are based on population rather than land area. We had earlier versions of this. We wanted a new one that would illustrate 8 billion people. So that's a great resource. We have it in a small version. We have it in a large poster. And then we have a PDF that teachers can use and share in their classroom too. The other poster we just put out is called A Quick Trip to 8 Billion. This is a 2-sided poster. The side you're looking at right now is a timeline that goes from roughly when we hit 1 billion people to today, and looking at all sorts of inventions and events and things that impacted population growth over that 200-year period. And there's a key on here to show which ones relate to food and agriculture, health, science and technology, and so forth. So that's really fun for the students to kind of take a deep dive into. The other side is looking more at recent history and sort of going forward, and what is the state of our world, the state of our global family in each of these different theme areas. So a lot of research was put into this. In addition to what's on the poster, we also have on our worldpopulationhistory.org website, you can look at activities that go with this poster. There's ideas for how students can help out if they want to get more involved in some of the areas that they read about. And then all of the sources are on there as well. So lots to learn. And then finally, just wanting to let you know, we have a lot of great resources on our populationeducation.org website, which is our main program website. We do quarterly themes that we do blogs on, we do webinars. We just had one last night on our theme on constructing arguments in the classroom. That was a lot of fun. There are demo videos of our staff demonstrating some of our activities, so you can check that out. And we do almost a new blog a week that goes up on a range of educational topics. So if you haven't checked out the populationeducation.org site, do so. And then our other 2 websites, again, are the contest site, worldof8billion.org, and that worldpopulationhistory.org. where you can find that poster and also our dot video, which I think many of you are probably familiar with. So that's it for me. I'm gonna, let's see. Having trouble turning off the screen sharing. I don't know if that's something. Okay, am I off? Yes.
Wonderful. We'll send it over to Population Connection Action Fund.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Dixon. I'm the Senior Vice President for Government and Political Affairs at Population Connection and Population Connection Action Fund. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our work from both organizations, largely from a policy standpoint, but and what's going on in Washington. Our policy priorities are pretty stable. We have, on the global side, we are pushing to get the Global Health Empowerment and Rights Act passed into law. That's the Global HER Act. It would repeal permanently the global gag rule, which has done enormous harm when it's in effect under Republican presidents. We want to repeal the longstanding Helms Amendment. We want to make sure the U.S. government continues to support the United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA. And we want to increase overall funding for family planning programs around the world. On the domestic side, we want to make sure that the Title X, which is the domestic family planning program, stays strong and its funding is increased, and also fighting to ensure that everyone in America has the right to a safe legal abortion. So those are that's sort of our top priorities legislatively. And we knew coming into 2023 it was going to be a challenge after the midterm elections. I don't think anyone would have guessed how big of a challenge it was going to be. But, the first, when Congress couldn't even get organized and start to do its work for 15 ballots it took to elect a speaker, and then they fired that speaker, and then it took them several more ballots to find a new speaker. So I think there's been, a total of 20 or 21 House floor votes just to choose a Speaker of the House. There's also been several votes to expel one member, George Santos, who finally was expelled on the third try. And as a result, the very small majority held by Republicans in the House has shrunk even further. I think it's currently 3. And when Kevin McCarthy leaves Congress by the end of the year, it's going to be 2. They're going to have a 2-seat majority, which you would think would make getting some stuff done easier. When you only have to flip a couple of people from the other party to support your efforts. But I think what's happening is that they're digging in even deeper. Every Republican, for example, in the House voted to start an impeachment proceeding against Joe Biden, despite the lack of any evidence to support it. And even when they talk to the press, they'll often say things to make it clear they don't have any evidence. And I think a Republican from Texas said publicly that they were doing this because they wanted to give Donald Trump something to fire back at in the campaign, to fire back with in the campaign, to be able to say, well, Biden was impeached too. So it's taking up enormous amounts of time and energy. And it's one of the reasons that we're coming up quickly on the third threat of government shutdown. Current government funding expires in middle of January. There doesn't seem to be any plan, much like it's been in the past couple of times, to how they're going to solve this for the long term. Part of the dilemma is the majority's insistent on focusing on things that aren't actually legislating or funding government. Part of it is also when the House did take up spending bills, they turned them into nothing but sort of right-wing wish lists, passing bills that had no chance of getting anywhere in the Senate, or being signed into law, just loaded down with all kinds of things. And on the global side, just for an example, they called for drastic cuts to family planning programs. They reinstate the global gag rule. They bar any support for UNFPA. They defunded the World Health Organization. They did all kinds of things, and they loaded it down with tons of other conservative policy riders. So that's coming up. One of the things they're talking about is just passing what they call a year-long continuing resolution, but that has its own problems. Such an event would trigger very serious cuts across the board to all kinds of non-defense discretionary programs. So that would include all of the family planning programs, both domestic and international, education, all public health programs would face very significant cuts. So there's a very broad coalition that we're part of working to prevent that from happening. So the courts are not much better. We're seeing a real problem with what's called venue shopping in the courts. So conservatives are filing what are on their face frivolous lawsuits and picking one federal judge who's just a pure ideologue, taking it to his court, getting him to make rulings that won't stand up, but it's just throwing all kinds of things into chaos, including, we just saw the news yesterday that the Supreme Court was going to be hearing a case on, mifepristone's approval by the FDA 20 plus years ago because of this one judge. So all of this is out there and going on. Other stuff happening on the political side. Several states are engaged in redistricting again. It seems the days of doing redistricting once after the census are over. North Carolina just did a whole new gerrymander of their congressional districts, which looks like it's going to switch, their goal is to switch their congressional delegation from a 7 to a 9-5 Republican majority. Looks like New York is going to do another round of redistricting, which is likely to have the opposite effect and be incredibly beneficial to Democrats running for Congress. How this is all going to shake out is unclear, but we do know that these elections have been and are likely to continue to be strongly affected by the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade a couple of years ago by the Supreme Court. I've talked to many Democrats in Congress about this. They all credit's not really the right word, but I can't think of a better word, but they credit the Dobbs decision with how well the Democrats did, both in the midterm elections in 2022, but also in all of the special elections and the state elections that have been held in 2023. Just a few weeks ago in Virginia, for example, the Democrats took control of both houses of the state legislature, largely as a result of the abortion issue. The Republican governor, campaigned on his plan to impose a 15-week abortion ban, and the voters rejected it. And so on that note, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the role of the Population Connection Action Fund, the sister organization to Population Connection, and its work in the political arena in endorsing candidates and supporting candidates across the country. I know Rebecca's going to talk a little bit more about our field program that's being set up, which is largely policy-based, but on the political side, we're going to be working, the Action Fund is going to be working to support candidates across the country who are supportive of access to reproductive health and supportive of reproductive freedom for people both across the United States and around the world. And on that note, I think that'll be it for me for now, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca, who will talk about the field work.
Hey everyone, great to be here with all of you today. Thanks for taking the time to join us. My name is Rebecca Harrington. I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy and Outreach for Population Connection and Population Connection Action Fund. And I'll be chatting about some of our field work in 2023 and some of our upcoming plans for 2024. And just want to note that everything I'll be reporting on will be activity that was done through our sister organization, Population Connection Action Fund. So just want to share that at the top. So 2023 for us was a real year of reflection and for planning what comes next. As Brian mentioned, and as I think everyone in this call knows, 2022 was a really significant year in terms of reproductive health and rights. Roe v. Wade was overturned, lots of abortion restrictions popped up across the country, and we had the 2022 midterm elections, which, as Brian just noted, ended up being fairly favorable for abortion rights and reproductive rights, because people were so angry about the Roe decision and the various restrictions that popped up between June and November. So since June 2022, over the past year and a half, we've continued to see a rise in anti-abortion action, with 18 states across the country having issued abortion bans or serious restrictions on abortion since the overturning of Roe in June 2022. We've also seen the election of an avowed anti-choice advocate as Speaker of the House of Representatives after a long drawn-out process, as Brian mentioned. And disturbingly, but probably not surprisingly to most of us, Donald Trump is once again, the Republican frontrunner for next year's presidential election. So a pretty intense landscape and backdrop to the work, we're doing in terms of field organizing work. So our team had to, kind of take a beat and spend quite a bit of time thinking about what comes next, and developing a really solid plan of organizing for 2024, which is obviously a presidential election year. We also worked on strengthening our connections with some of our global partners, as well as continue to work closely with Melvin Oyo, who works for us as a consultant on the Population Connection Action Fund side, and also sits on our Population Connection Board of Directors. And she is a reproductive health provider and advocate based in Kenya. So does work for us, travels around Kenya and other parts of East Africa, collecting stories, interviewing folks, to really give us a picture of what's happening on the ground in that region. And then we, as we have, the past 20 plus years, hosted our annual Capitol Hill Days event this past April. And we, continuing on that theme of engaging global partners, hosted several of our colleagues from East Africa and South America to talk about the really far-reaching impact of U.S. family planning policy, beyond our borders, as well as here in the U.S., as well as some vital youth-led sexual and reproductive health initiatives, engaging men as active participants in family planning, and then as well the undeniable link between gender equity and environmental issues. And these colleagues brought issues of international family planning and reproductive health into really tangible terms that our activists at the Capitol Hill Days advocacy event were able to use when lobbying their members of Congress in support of the Global Her Act, and in support of greater U.S. funding for international family planning, which is, of course, always a goal. We're trying to lift up voices from around the world who can best talk about the impact that negative U.S. policy has on their work and the benefits of really robust U.S. funding and unrestrictive reproductive health policy. We've also continued to work sort of on the domestic side. We've continued to work in coalition with groups like Planned Parenthood to protect access to mifepristone, which Brian just spoke a little bit about. Mifepristone is one of the medications used for medication abortion and has come under really serious threat this year, an attack. So something we've been working on this year is a People's Pledge to protect mifepristone. This is an effort started by Planned Parenthood. They asked partner organizations to join them in collecting signatures and said, sort of make it your own, send it out to your members. So we created our own version, and the petition is asking, saying, we need to protect access to mifepristone, and, seeking to prevent, far right extremist overreach of our federal courts. So essentially to protect our federal courts as well. So we've collected 572 pledges for that petition. And that's kind of an ongoing thing that we've had going since April, I believe. And just as a little bit more of background on that, for those who are unfamiliar, there's been, kind of a roller coaster back and forth this year around mifepristone. In February, a far-right conservative judge in Texas named Matthew Kaczmarek issued a decision that suspended mifepristone's FDA approval, which has been around since 2000, so over 20 years old, and which would have halted access to the drug, which is incredibly widely used. I believe the most common form of abortion in this country. And so in April, the Supreme Court granted emergency requests to put a hold on this decision. So that would, stop it from being implemented while the case moved through the courts. And then in August, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision which would have prevented telemedicine prescriptions for mifepristone and would have banned shipping it by mail. This decision, it was also held while the Supreme Court reviews the case. And then, as Brian mentioned yesterday, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the Biden administration's appeal of the Fifth Circuit's decision, which they'll hear this term and rule on by next June. So, we'll be waiting, not eagerly, but anxiously to see that decision. And then moving into, more in the last half of our year, we've spent a lot of time preparing to relaunch. I'm just making sure. Oh, I'm sorry that audio isn't working for some folks. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't for everyone. Hopefully we can address that. We've spent preparing to relaunch our highly successful Fight for Her campaign, which we had run from 2017 through 2020. It was highly successful. We engaged, over 60,000 people around protecting reproductive freedom around the world, and specifically around ending the global gag rule. We'll be reactivating this campaign in 2024 in person, which is very exciting, in 6 locations around the country. So we'll be in Las Vegas, Nevada, Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona, Manchester, New Hampshire, Columbus, Ohio, and the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania. And we've been offering, over the last couple of months, activists involved in in the first iteration of the campaign, the first wave of the campaign, opportunities to once again be involved in this, this really important effort to support reproductive freedom around the world. And then, of course, we've been trying to connect with potentially new activists as well. So I think Stephanie, yes, thank you, Stephanie, just dropped a link to an action, and email your legislators' action, asking senators and representatives to support the Global Her Act, which would permanently end the global gag rule. And this also, will allow you to sign up to join this next phase of the Fight for Her campaign. So I'd encourage you all to sign up for that if you haven't yet. At this point, we've had over 600 people sign that, which is great. That's great action, being sent to legislators. And we're also excited to have already a nice base of people joining us for 2024. As part of this reactivation of the campaign in October, we hosted, a virtual Fight for Her kickoff rally. Once again, featuring partners all from East Africa, who are working on a variety of sexual and reproductive health issues. And they all highlighted, again, the real life stories of those who want and deserve reproductive health care. Always want to lift up those voices first and let people tell their own stories. And then, looking towards next year and the last couple of weeks of this year and the first couple months of next year, we'll be planning what will likely be organizing and voter education projects that we've started to sort of map out for 2024. So really educating people on the policy issues that we work on, and then making sure people have the info they need for the general election coming up at the end of next year. And I guess just in closing, I'll say, we know that next year will be a critical election year, and I feel like we all say that always now about every election. But we're excited to hit the ground, to educate people and activate people, see people in person again, and do what we can to protect and expand reproductive health and rights for everyone around the world. So that's all I have, but happy to answer any questions folks have when we do Q&A. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I think it's my turn now. I'm Marian Starkey. I'm the Vice President for Communications here at Population Connection, and I'm going to see if I can share my slides. Hopefully you can see them. So I wanted to mention that I'm sort of speaking on behalf of the comms team today, which is me, Hannah Evans, who's moderating this panel, and Olivia Nader, who is our communications manager. And this presentation, these slides, which will be sent to you, I think tomorrow, Stephanie said, are loaded with links to specific pages on our website that have resources about the topics that I'm going to cover. So look for those. Anything with an underline is a link. So we'll start by talking about earned media. I know that our members are very invested in us getting the population message in front of the general public through newspapers and that type of outreach. And we do spend a lot of time combing news stories and responding to them with letters to the editor, and also writing opinion pieces, longer opinion pieces, when there is, something specific going on that we believe we should weigh in on. We had a pretty good year this year of getting some exciting media placements, a couple of times in the New York Times, Boston Globe, the Denver Post, and all of our media placements are at this link. You can see a list of everything that we've done this year, and I think going back a couple of years as well. We started doing something this year just to get our unpublished submissions out there publicly. So when we submit something and we wait a week, and if it doesn't get published, sometimes we shop it around and send it to other papers too, and they'll pick it up. But if they don't, we've started putting them on our blog. So if you click here, it'll take you directly to a list of blog posts, which are actually our letters to the editor in response to articles that we felt needed our voice to weigh in on. So if you're looking for inspiration to write your own letters, you can see examples of what we're writing and what we're submitting there. And we do have a new page on our website for our members' media hits. So I know that a lot of our members regularly submit letters and opinion pieces, and I think we don't usually hear about them when they get published, but a lot of times we do, and we have started listing those on this page. And would like to encourage you to let us know if you get something published. Even if you don't mention us by name, that's totally fine. If it's about population, we'd be curious to know about it, and we will put you up on this page. And if you need a little help getting started, we've got a media guide here that just gives you some starting talking points. And we also have a new page with facts and figures. So it's the most recent data that we feel is kind of, at the core of the intersection of the topics that we cover, population health and environment. So if you're looking to ground your submission in some sort of, data, you can find some good starting points there. So our blog is very active. Olivia posts almost weekly, so we've had over 50 posts this year, and this is just an example of some of the topics that she's covered this year. A lot of the blog posts from this year were Q&As with our global partners, and I'll talk about them in the next slide. But if you're curious to hear more from our global partners than you already do through these virtual events, which I know a lot of you regularly attend, then those might be of interest to you. And then speaking of our global partners, we are now up to 19 organizations, smallish organizations in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and then Nepal in South Asia that we support with, relatively small grants, but we have these amazing partnerships with them where, we support their work and then they speak to all of you and they inform the work that we do with stories from their programs on the ground. So all of these are linked to their respective web pages if you want to learn more about them directly. That's a full list. As we always do, we published 4 issues of our quarterly magazine this year. The March issue covered the human-wildlife interface in Uganda and focused on the work of Dr. Gladys Kalema-Zikusoka, who is on our board of directors and founded and leads Conservation Through Public Health, which was our first global partner. The June issue looked at deforestation in the Congo Basin and how it contributes to climate change. And that feature article actually was written by Olivia. The September issue looked at low fertility and aging in advanced economies. And then the December issue, which is actually just out this week, hopefully if you haven't received it already, you will be in the next day or two, focuses on population projections and the limitations that come along with population projections. We have a new version of our very popular info brief. Hannah wrote this a couple of years ago with the help of an outside researcher named Janet Larson, and it's intended for professors who teach their students about population and climate change linkages, but it's available for anybody. I think it's 12 pages long, and then there's also a digital version on the website. But yeah, this is our most popular page on the website after our homepage. I think it got almost 50,000 views so far this year. So if you are curious to read this resource or hand it out to people that you might know, you can click here and it'll take you to that resource on our website. Hannah also co-wrote an encyclopedia chapter this year. It's not out yet, it'll be out next year, but the abstract is available online. And one of our former fellows, Alex Casey, is also a co-author on the chapter. So that's exciting. Alex left us to go to grad school last year, I think. So yeah, this will be another great resource for professors to use when they're talking about population and environmental connections. Most of what Hannah spends her time doing, though, is speaking to college and university classes. So she's done 75 presentations so far this year. And yeah, she's often speaking to multiple classes per week all over the country because, they're virtual. She did, however, have her first in-person presentation since COVID this year at the University of San Diego. So that's what this picture is from. And then this screenshot I like, it's from a presentation she did for students of human ecology at the University of Guam. And they enjoyed her presentation so much, they actually asked her back for next spring to speak at their conference on island sustainability. So I think she'll probably do that. And I just wanted to mention that if any of you are professors and would like Hannah to come talk to your classes, she is available to do that. And I have her email on the last slide of this slide deck. Or if you're in a local group that you think would be interested to hear about these issues. Sometimes, I don't know, John has been known to speak at Unitarian Universalist churches or Rotary clubs, things like that. Yeah, she'd be happy to hear from you. We did a pilot program this year that was exciting at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Hannah taught a summer course for full credit for students who signed up for it. So they had previously, the university had previously had a course called World Population Problems, and I think it hadn't run for a couple of years at least. And so Hannah resurrected it, wrote a new syllabus, came up with all of the, the reading lists and the materials and everything, and got, I think, 10 guest speakers to join over the course of the 5 weeks to talk to the students. A lot of the guest speakers were from our global partner organizations, and the students said that they particularly enjoyed those presentations and really liked hearing from people in the countries where, that receive US foreign aid, basically. So yeah, they she distributed a survey at the end, and she got some really great feedback. So I included a couple of the quotes there that I think are really nice. And it went so well, we're going to do it again next year. And I think in 2024, we're actually going to open it up to the entire University of North Carolina system, because it'll be a virtual class again. So students don't need to be at Greensboro for any particular reason. We have a board member who is a professor there, which is how we decided to do the pilot there in the first place. Okay, a lot of you probably attended this. Hannah and Olivia and I did a World Population Day panel in July. And just because of how much this topic has been in the news recently, population or low population growth, low fertility, aging, and what that all means for advanced economies, that's mostly what we focused on and talked about different countries, you know, reasonable and less reasonable responses to that, what they consider to be a challenge. So if you weren't there, if you didn't watch it live, you can find the video at this link, and you can watch it any old time you want. Lastly, I would like to just put in a plug for our social media. I know a lot of people aren't on social media, but if you are, it would be really great if you could follow us and engage with our posts. Olivia posts really interesting, informative content every day. A lot of it is population news, but a lot of it is about the work that we do here too. It's, you know, about upcoming events and things like that. But, you know, if you want people to see content about population, one way to help make sure that happens is to engage with our social media content, because the more engagement it gets, the more people will see it. It's just kind of how the algorithm works. So that's my little plea, to please follow us and engage with the posts. And then finally, yeah, here's the contact info for the three of us. And if you have questions or feedback or ideas or suggestions, you're welcome to email us anytime, and we would love to hear from you. I think that's all I've got for now. So I guess I'll hand it over to Hannah, who's going to do the Q&A part.
All right, thanks, Marian, and thanks everyone. That was a really interesting set of presentations, and it's always nice to hear what everybody in our organization is doing. It's hard to believe another year has already passed by. We've got a little bit of time for questions, and a few of them were submitted in the chat just now. So I'm going to get to those first and then go to the pre-submitted, questions, of which there are many. So if you do have questions that you want answered during this live presentation, please feel free to voice them in the chat, and we will get to them as soon as possible. So the first question is for Pam. First of all, there was a lot of communication in the chat just about your graphics and really liking them, wanting to get access to high resolution pictures and the posters. So maybe you could speak a little bit to how those can be downloaded or accessed. And then supplementarily, I wanted to ask you, sorry, I'm totally losing my train of thought here. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if you could just speak a little bit more about your, how you come to choose the different states in which you work, and if you've done any analyses kind of looking at where the need is greatest, and then from there looked geographically to kind of supplement your programs or engage in programs in various places of need. Sorry about that. I must have deleted the question I just wrote down.
That's great. Well, thanks for the questions. As far as I'll start with the last part first about how we decide on where we're going to do workshops and areas of greatest need. If you've worked in education or know people who have, you might know that, you know, over the last 20 years or so, it's become very standards based, and content standards for different disciplines vary a lot from state to state. So we first look to see where is there a good fit for population education. You know, in some states in science and social studies, it's very clear. In other places, we have to kind of figure out a way to fit in the best we can. But I would say that where teachers are most interested in getting our materials, it's where, you know, they know it's something that they should be teaching because it's been mandated by their state. we also get requests from all over the country. And so when we have local people who can fill them, great. When we start to get requests from areas where we don't have enough local people, that's maybe an area we decide we either want to do a training institute or have a staff trip where we do a number of workshops in that local area to start to get something going. So there's a lot of ways that, you know, we kind of gauge where the best places are to go. Also, I had talked about these College Board AP institutes, and they happen everywhere because the AP courses are taught everywhere in the country. You may have heard the big controversy over the last year in Florida. Ron DeSantis, you know, was kind of having a battle with the College Board, and a lot of parents were pretty upset if those AP courses went away because students depend on them a lot for college credit. So we're able to work everywhere, but the places where, you know, the states have made environmental ed a priority, global studies, population, there's a lot more interest in what we're doing, obviously. As far as getting our materials, happy to send some of those posters out. You can just email me at pam@popconnect.org with your mailing address, and I'll put some in the mail to you. The small sizes we're happy to just send out complimentary. And I think there was a question about high res. I can also include that in what Stephanie sends out after the session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pam. The second question is for Marian. Just looking into our Global Partners program. There's a question here just asking about West Africa and why we don't have any partners there. And I think it relates very nicely to a pre-submitted question, which asks how we come to partner with different organizations and what the protocol is there.
Okay, so I'll answer as best I can, which is that I think most of the global partners that we have are from word of mouth. I mean, Rebecca talked about Melvine Oyo, who we have been working with for years and years, and she, you know, like Rebecca said, travels around East Africa, meeting with people from different organizations. So you'll notice on that list that a lot of the organizations are in East Africa. We also have a board member who is Guatemalan and used to run the organization Wings. And so we support that organization, and we did before he was on the board. And he has introduced us to a couple of other organizations in that region. Some of them are run by members who have just told us over the years that they have these organizations and, you know, would love to have our support. And so, you know, there is a vetting process that we go through to determine whether it's appropriate for us to support these organizations. And that is not something that I'm involved in, but I know it does include, you know, looking at their financials and whether they're registered in the United States, which not all of them are, but just, you know, there are a bunch of different things that kind of get ticked off looking for potential partners. But you know, if you have suggestions, because again, it's mostly word of mouth. So if you have suggestions for organizations that you think that we should be supporting, please let us know and we will consider them. I don't know if anybody else has additional information, but that's what I know.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. I think we just kind of wanted to get a general understanding of how our Global Partners program actually works. So that was perfect. Thank you. So Rebecca, I'm looking at a question here that asks you in particular, does your work involve getting voters registered or more focused on education of registering voters? And how does that work?
That's a great question. And we have actually been having an internal back and forth about this for the past probably couple of months. And I think nothing is set in stone yet. So there's still, you know, we're still sort of working things out. There's possibility for things to be tweaked. But I think where we've landed is on doing voter education work as opposed to voter registration work. Both very important, but we have leaned towards doing voter education because it just seems like for, you know, sort of the size organization that we are, we'll be able to have a greater impact by doing voter education. So voter education would be, there's different ways to message it, but it would be, for instance, in Las Vegas, going door to door, door knocking, and telling people, you know, reproductive health and rights and international family planning will be an issue on the ballot this year. Here's some information about what that means. One approach is to you know, share information from every candidate, you know, Democrats, Republicans, what have you, you know, to give people like the full array of information about who's saying what and who stands, you know, where on the issue. And then, you know, as you get closer, you can kind of do that for longer. And as you get closer to the election, you can give people, you know, voting information. So, you know, where's my polling place? How do I get there? Like, what are all the steps to go through? And it's possible to do those things in both a partisan political way and in a nonpartisan way. So I think as of now, next year, we will not be doing voter registration, but we are most likely going to be doing voter education work. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We've only got about 2 minutes left here, and we've got a whole list of questions that were pre-submitted. So I'm just going to get to a few of them, hopefully. The first is for Marian, and it's a question that asks a lot about how to respond to claims that the world population is decreasing. We've been hearing a lot about this in the news, about the impending supposed doom that this is going to equate to. And obviously, we don't believe that this is true, but how can we appropriately respond to and educate people about what's actually going on here?
Yeah, I mean, the data is so clear on this. I'm not sure why people perpetuate this myth. It's bizarre to me. I mean, you know, as you all know, we reached 8 billion people in November of last year. That's 12 years after we reached 7 billion, you know, and there's no end in sight. So certainly the world population is not declining, nor is the US population declining. So yeah, I mean, right now the UN Population Division projects that we will reach 9 billion people, I think, in 2037. But one of the things from the issue of the magazine that just came out that I think is really important to look at is how those projections are made, what the assumptions are that, you know, lead to the projection results. So like determining what level you think as a demographer the total fertility rate will be in all of the different countries in the world going forward in the, you know, in the coming years. And the person, Dr. Jane O'Sullivan, who I interviewed for this issue of the magazine that I'm talking about, had a lot of interesting things to say about that, mostly around the projections being far too optimistic, that fertility has not come down anywhere near as fast as the UN has projected that it would, and yet it still continues to sort of project in the same way that it has. All to say that this, you know, this projection of, you know, 9 billion in 2037, you know, that's an optimistic projection. In that same report, their latest data that they released, they are saying that the world population will likely peak in the 2080s at like 10.4 billion people. So a lot of us won't be alive then to see whether that comes to pass. But again, very optimistic projections there. So, you know, the world population is still growing by like 80 million people a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if I could add, I think this is just a real example of why it's so important that we keep pressure on government to keep investing and increase their investment in family planning programs. Because unless we make access to reproductive health and contraceptives available to everyone, it's going to be harder and harder to address this.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And I wanted to get to you, Brian. There's a couple of questions here. Just as we kind of sign off here, I wanted to ask you, you know, you were talking so much about the gridlock that exists and the sort of political division and turmoil, but what are you most hopeful about in this next year related to the work that you're doing and just politics overall?
I think the the reaction of voters to what happened with Roe gives a lot of room for hope. You know, I think for a long time, Republicans thought they were going to be able to get away with restricting access, and I think they've been shown pretty clearly that people are not willing to accept this. And so that gives me hope that that people are not going to stand by and let rights be taken away from them, and not let services be taken away from others either. So that would be my brief answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there's a lot to look forward to in this next year. And thank you all so much for giving such thorough and in-depth examples of and analyses of your work over the past year. It's really impressive. And I am lucky to be part of this organization and to work with all of you. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone who attended. We will be following up very soon with answers to the pre-submitted questions and some supplementary information for you all. All right, so thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.